being here with us today. Okay, so we are going to start the sharing session in a moment, but beforehand, we would like to announce some housekeeping notes, okay, to make before we begin today's session. First of all, kindly switch off your video and microphone to avoid interruption. You may use the chat box to communicate with us, and the host and the moderator will help you later to manage the camera and the microphone. And then audience, in the closing part of today's session, there will be virtual group photos for our documentation. So we would like to seek your cooperation in completing this session. And the sharing session will be also broadcasted on UST YouTube channel. Okay, distinguished panelists, rector, vice rector, deans, heads of department, fellow teachers and students, and all of the audience of ELT Sharing Session 2. Good morning, salam dan bahagia. I am Laksmi Widyarini, and on behalf of the committee, I would like to extend a very warm welcome to all of you for attending this sharing session. The agenda for today, opening, speeches, and then the sharing session, and then the last is closing. Bapak, Ibu, panelists, and audience, I kindly request you to take a moment of silence, asking God Almighty to bless us His grace for today's session. Doa dipersilakan. Terima kasih. And now, with all respect, we kindly ask you to stand or remain on your seat for our national anthem, Indonesia Raya, and Himne Taman Siswa. Please wait. It seems that there is a technical problem in our connection. Okay, thank you. We're terribly sorry for the problem in our connection. Okay, the next is opening remarks from Bapak Anselmus Sudirman, Sarjana Pendidikan Magister Humaniora, Head of English Department, Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa, to deliver an opening speech. Pak Ansel, the screen is all yours.
Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam dan bahagia. Respected rector, vice rectors, dean and the vice deans of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa Yogyakarta. Rectors and vice rectors, deans, vice deans, and heads of the English education departments of our co-host, Universitas Sanata Dharma Yogyakarta, Universitas Mercu Buana Yogyakarta, and Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana Salatiga, Central Java. Distinguished speakers, participants, ladies and gentlemen. First and foremost, we are always grateful to the Almighty God because His power, blessings, and guidance make everything possible to do today. He is our mainstay now and forever and ever. At this special moment, we would like to extend a very warm welcome to all participants, whether you are university students, lecturers, teachers, translators, or professionals. We are pleased to have you here on this webinar platform. It is our honor and pleasure to express tremendous gratitude to the Rector of Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa Yogyakarta, Professor Haji Pardimin, MPD, PhD, the Vice Rector of Academic Affairs, Dr. Imam Gosali, MSc, the Vice Rector of Finance and Human Resources, Dr. Randa Trishar Sivi, MPD, the Vice Rector of Students Affairs, Dr. Andus Widodo Budi, MSc, and the Vice Rector of Domestic and Foreign Affairs, Yuyun Yulia, PhD, the Dean of the Faculty of Teacher Training and Education, Nanang Bagus Subekti, SPD, MED. The Vice Dean of Students Affairs, Dr. Arif Bintoro Johan, MPD. The Vice Dean of Academic Affairs, Dr. Anda Haja Esti Harini, MPD. And the Vice Dean of Academic Affairs, Dr. Anda Yohana Sumiyati, MPD. Most importantly, the rectors and vice rectors, deans, vice deans, and the heads of the English education departments of our co-host, Universitas Sanata Dharma, Yogyakarta, Universitas Mercu Buana, Yogyakarta, and Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana Salatiga, Central Java. Your strong support and motivation have made today's second ELT sharing session a groundbreaking event. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, we are proud to introduce the eminent speakers a little bit to all of you. Elizabeth Titik Murtisari M. Transtad, PhD of Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana Salatiga, Central Java. Dangin SPD M. Hum of Universitas Mercu Buana, Yogyakarta. Laurencia Sumarni M. Transtad of Universitas Sanata Dharma, Yogyakarta. Estri Oktarena Ikrarini SSMA of Universitas Sajana Viata Taman Siswa, Yogyakarta. We thank you very much for your scholarly contribution and knowledge sharing. We do appreciate the key roles you are going to play today. We also express our special gratitude to the head of the committee, Dita Surwanti SSM Hum, and the committee members for their collaboration, hardworking, coordination, and open lines of interactions. Last but not the least, we thank you very much for the MC, Teresia Laksmi Vidarini M. Hum, the moderator, Adria Vitalia Gemilang M. Hum, and everyone behind the scene. We hope that this webinar presents a fruitful and constructive discussion in order to solve the transition issues at hand or in years ahead. If not, I have been wondering, we keep asking the same question, what's hot and not in translation? Ladies and gentlemen, enjoy the webinar and thank you for your participation. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam dan bahagia.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Ansel, for the kind speech. Bapak, Ibu, and audience, we are going to the second speech. It is the speech by Bapak Dr. Arif Bintoro Johan, Magister Pendidikan, Vice Deans of Students Affairs. But, okay. Let me check with the committee first whether Pak Arif is ready, because he's also in charge of other webinars in our university. Pak Arif, are you here with us now?
Oke, siap Ibu. Terima kasih.
Thank you. All right. So, Bapak and Ibu and all of the audience, now it's time for our Vice Deans of Students Affairs to give us a little speech and also to open this webinar. Pak Arif, waktu dan tempat kami, silakan.
Oke, terima kasih Ibu. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam dan bahagia. Tentunya yang pertama, saya mohon maaf dulu. Saya nanti kalau menggunakan bahasa Inggris, malah nanti takut salah, maka saya lebih bangga dalam kesempatan forum yang mulia ini, daripada nanti salah, saya menggunakan bahasa nasional kita, bahasa Indonesia. Yang terhormat, para pembicara dalam webinar nasional yang diselenggarakan oleh Program Studi Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris, Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa pada kesempatan pagi hari ini. Yang pertama, Ibu Elizabeth Titik Murtisari PhD dari Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana Salatiga. Yang kedua, Ibu Laurentia Sumarni Master Studi dari Universitas Sanata Dharma Yogyakarta. Yang ketiga, Ibu Esri Oktarena Ikrarini, Sarjana Sastra Master of Art dari Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa, dan Bapak Dangin Sarjana Pendidikan Magister Humaniora dari Universitas Mercubuana Yogyakarta. Yang kami hormati, tentunya Ketua Program Studi Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris, teman sejawat kami, Bapak Anselmus Sudirman, dan keluarga besar Program Studi Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris, para senior-senior kami, dan tentunya Bapak Ibu, seluruh peserta webinar dalam ruang virtual via Zoom meeting ini yang berbahagia. Tentunya rasa syukur dari Tuhan Yang Maha Kasih pada kesempatan pagi hari ini kita bisa hadir bersama dalam rangkaian acara webinar pada kesempatan kali ini yang mengambil topik yang luar biasa. Karena kita tahu bersama bahwa pengetahuan dan keterampilan menerjemahkan ini menjadi kompetensi yang sangat penting bagi kita semuanya. Jujur saya akui, ketika saat studi S2 maupun S3 harus menerjemahkan tugas-tugas, harus menerjemahkan materi-materi, bahkan di akhir, jujur saya apresiasi, saya dibantu, ini salah satu pembicara, Bu Oktarena ini. Nah, ini menjadi kompetensi yang luar biasa yang pada kesempatan kali ini akan dikaji dan dibahas. Bahwa tugas penerjemah itu adalah mengkomunikasikan gagasan atau pesan dari bahasa sumber ke bahasa sasaran. Jadi tugas penerjemah bukan hanya menerjemahkan naskah saja, tetapi selebihnya juga mengedit naskah. Sehingga apa? Sehingga para audien yang nantinya akan membaca itu bisa tahu, bisa hadir di dalamnya, bisa mengerti apa yang menjadi inti dari apa yang ditulis tersebut. Sehingga pembaca tidak melenceng jauh dari bahasa sumber. Nah, ini menjadikan kompetensi yang luar biasa yang pada kesempatan kali ini akan dibahas oleh para narasumber-narasumber hebat, yaitu Ibu Elizabeth Titik Murtisari, Ibu Laurentia Sumarni, Ibu Estri Oktarina, dan Bapak Dangin. Maka secara kelembagaan dari Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan mengapresiasi kegiatan yang diinisiasi oleh program studi pendidikan bahasa Inggris ini. Dan pada kesempatan pagi hari ini juga kami sampaikan permohonan pamit Dekan Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Ki Nanang Bagus Subekti, Master of Education, tidak bisa membersamai kita. Titip salam hormat untuk para pembicara dan seluruh peserta, karena pada saat yang bersamaan tidak bisa meninggalkan untuk tugas menguji komprehensif untuk program studi PPG. Sehingga mewakilkan pada saya dan menyampaikan salam hormat dan apresiasi atas kegiatan yang dilaksanakan oleh program studi PBI Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa ini. Sehingga apa yang akan dibahas ini terkait kegiatan penerjemahan, yaitu kegiatan multibahasa, terutama bahasa Inggris ini, dapat berjalan dengan sukses, menambah wawasan kita, dan tentunya riset-riset tentang terjemahan ini yang sekarang menjadi hot, yang sekarang menjadi in, dan tentunya berbanding terbalik, mohon maaf saya sampaikan, apresiasi untuk para penerjemah itu boleh dibilang masih sangat kurang. Nah, ini mungkin bisa menjadi pemantik isu ketika nanti akan dibahas dalam seminar ini. Kiranya itu tidak elok dan tidak etis, perlu kami panjangkan dan lebarkan, nanti tidak menjadi luas. Maka pada kesempatan pagi hari ini, secara resmi, dengan ucapkan Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, rangkaian acara webinar nasional yang diselenggarakan oleh Keluarga Besar Pendidikan Bahasa Inggris, Fakultas Keguruan dan Ilmu Pendidikan, Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa ini saya nyatakan dibuka. Terima kasih, banyak salah dan kurangnya mohon dimaafkan. Sukses selalu untuk program studi pendidikan bahasa Inggris FKIP UST ini. Nasrul minallah wa billahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Okay. Thank you very much, Pak Arif, for the kind speech and also to open this sharing session. Bapak, Ibu, distinguished panelists, and also all of the audience of this ELT sharing session too, we now come to the main agenda of our sharing session. Four distinguished panelists have been kindly invited to share their insightful and fruitful ideas and thoughts. And the sharing session will be moderated by Ibu Adria Vitalia Gemilang, Sarjana Sastra, Magister Humaniora. Bapak and Ibu and audience, please welcome our panelists and moderator. And to Bumia, the sharing session is now all yours.
Thank you, Bu Laksmi. It is an honor to be the moderator today. And Bapak, Ibu, all participants in our second ELT sharing session today, we have 4 speakers discussing about translation, what's hot and what's not in translation. And the presenters are Ibu Elizabeth Titik Murtisari, M. Transstat, PhD from Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana, Ibu Laurencia Sumarni, M. Transstat from Universitas Sanata Dharma, Ibu Estri Oktarena Ikrarini, Sarjana Sastra, MA from Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa, and Bapak Dangin, Sarjana Pendidikan Magister of Humaniora from Universitas Mercu Buana Yogyakarta. Our discussion today is divided into 2 sessions. The first session is presentation from all 4 speakers, and the second session is the question and answer session. Later on, question can be posed in the chat box or asked directly by pressing the raising hand button. Now, without further ado, let's begin this session by listening to our first speaker, Ibu Elizabeth Titik Murtisari, M. Transstat, PhD. Today, she is going to share about the multilingual turn, re-embracing translation in language teaching. Ibu Elizabeth Titik Murtisari obtained her Master's in Translation Study, Applied Linguistics from Australian National University, and PhD degree in the same discipline from Monash University. Her research interests are in translation, pragmatic, and use of translation in language teaching. Without further ado, I would like to invite Bu Titi. Bu Titi, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The time is yours, Bu Titi.
Yeah. Right. All right. Good morning, everyone. Okay. It is like it is like an honor for me to be able to represent my faculty, to be in this webinar. Okay. Today I'll be speaking about the marginalization of translation in language teaching and learning, and why we need to rehabilitate it and integrate it in our teaching practice. Okay. With the emergence of the multilingual turn, which renews our understanding of language learning. Okay, it is high time to open ourselves to translation again. Yeah. Okay, let me okay, I have chat my screen. Okay. All right, so the title of my presentation is the multilingual trend, re-embracing translation in language teaching and learning. Okay. Okay, let's start with the definitions of translation. What is translation? Translation may be defined as an act of communication which attempts to relay across cultural and linguistic boundaries another act of communication. So here, it is very clear that translation is a form of communication. Okay, and then let's have a look at the second definition. Okay, another definition is by Colina and Levert. Okay, translation may be defined as a cross-linguistic mediation process of a product, or a product resulting from transferring or mediating text of different lengths, ranging from words or sentences to entire books from one human language to another, which generally requires a significant degree of resemblance and correspondence. Here, concepts of resemblance and correspondence, will set translation apart from versions. Okay, and also here's mediation process. So translation is generally not a mere change of a mere replacement of forms, which is literal rendering. But here it also can be just transferring. So literal rendering is also part of translation, and it is also what important. Although in general we don't want literal translation. We want communicative translation, but literal translation can be used for linguistics, can be used for closings, and also a specific purpose of translation. Yeah, but basically but generally literal translation is discouraged. Okay. Okay, now the abandonment of translation. So translation has been abandoned for decades in language teaching and learning. Okay, it started with the rise of direct method, which focuses on the primary of speech. Okay, and also they also believe that language acquisition must be done in L2. Okay, and it results in the fall of GTM. Okay, so GTM was seen as uncommunicative. Okay, it was mainly done deductively, teacher centered, and it also used in authentic sentences. Okay, and then so it was considered to fail, to teach students to communicate, and because of that if you work in language teaching, the the reform movement emerged, and then followed by direct method. Okay. Okay, with the direct method, it doesn't result only the ban of GTM, but also the avoidance of L1 in classroom, in English, not only English, foreign language classrooms, and as a result, translation is was also banned. Okay, there are specific reasons why translation has been banned in language teaching. Okay, so it is considered to prevent the development of automaticity in language use, and then encourage reliance on L1 in L2 production, because you do not do it directly in the target language. Okay. And then it's also considered to overemphasize accuracy of communication, and then it's also considered to be a source of language interference. Okay, from L1, and then also, and sometimes it's also considered not a relevant skill in language learning. Okay, and unsuitable for communicative language teaching, and the last one that is often raised is it is considered boring. Yeah. Okay, but the negative claims here are largely not corroborated with evidence. So it's an interesting phenomena, because the claims have not been research based, and it is interesting why a lot of language scholars just accept the abandonment without questioning it. Okay. Yeah, it is in 1990s several scholars have started question this, but it, like people like, were only silent. It was only in 2010 when Guy Cook, with his seminal book, like, what's like, I can't remember, like, the book. Okay, translation in language teaching. Okay. Oh, you cannot see it. Okay. Translation in language teaching, an argument for reassessment. Like then things like have started to change. Okay. Okay. So and like the unfavorable claims, okay, are often a result of negative sentiment towards GTM. Okay. And here, like Thornbury, like has rightly put it here, like they are simply excess baggage that grammar translation accredited. Yeah, it is gradually, this means gradually accumulated. In its passage through the 19th century, the notions of fluency, skills, work, and whole text are not in the least incompatible with a translation-mediated approach. So, like the baby has been thrown away with the bathwater. Okay, although like it was GTM that like was not communicative, it wasn't. Okay, but then like translation was also like abandoned. Okay, marginalized. Okay, and then the second one is also caused by monolingual bias. Okay, here like is the belief that language acquisition can must mimic L1 acquisition and can be separate like from L1. Okay, and it's based on native speakerism that like learners like need to be able to achieve like a near native speaker competency. And then here, I have actually mentioned it. Okay, that additional language should be acquired separately from first language, like which we will later see that this is not actually true, based on research. Okay, right. Okay, L1 and L2, like are like link, always link, and they cannot be separated like from each other. Okay. Okay, like now like the multilingual like trend. Okay, so like our world has actually like been multilingual. Okay, and then like in the 1990s, okay, like like several scholars like in like language teaching learning started like to question like monolingualism. Okay, like it's so basically like the more multilingual is a criticism like against monolingualism. Okay, and so so what is multilingualism? Okay, it is coexistent contact and interaction of different languages. And the multilingual turn itself may be defined as a shift of paradigm advocating the incorporation of multilingual and translingual perspectives, okay, in applied linguistics and sociolinguistics, okay. Because like in applied linguistics, before like this had been dominated by monolingualism. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so multilingual turn is like criticism towards the monolingual approach, and then it says that the globalized world and increased mobility has resulted in super diversity. Okay, from Arnaud et al. Oh, there's something that I haven't. What? Sorry, with this one. This is my note. Okay, and then here people interact with different languages and cultures. And what is like perhaps like most important is once languages are linked to one another, if they are inseparable like from another, there is no separation like in the monolingual approach. So like there is also like research that shows when like someone learn like think like in L2, there are part like in your in like the learner's brain that link to L1 was also activated. Okay, so basically, like, our brain, like, do not separate, like, if you can call it schemata in of L1 and L2. When you learn, like, L2, like, L1 is also, like, activated. So it is basically, like, nonsense when you learn L2 and then you are not allowed to use L1. Okay. Okay. Here, like, in the multilingual trend, like, translation becomes crucial. Okay, so L1 and L2 are inseparable from each other. And even when L1 is suppressed, student will still resort to it through thinking in L1 or mental translation. Okay. There's, like, a study, actually 2 studies that, like, show that, like, in writing, there were, the learners, like, were tested, on, on writing. Okay. But then, like, and they were asked to write directly in L2. Okay. But then, like, when they were, there was, like, what you call, like, interviewed. Okay. They said, like, actually it's like, what think aloud protocol, use, like, think aloud protocol. The other one use interviews, but anyway, both, like, showed that the learners, like, still think, still thought, like, in L1, although they were asked, like, to write, in L2 directly. Yeah. And then, like, another reason why translation is crucial is translation is a necessary skill to navigate across, like, languages and cultures. It is the fifth skill. Like, this will be like, this is like, very important, like, in Indonesia, because, like, we we have a multilingual society. Okay. And, like, this will be used, like, in day-to-day, in daily, like, students' life. Okay. And then the next one, which is very important as well, like, translation helps maintain learners' language and culture. Okay. This is, like, especially relevant with the teaching of English, because English is a dominant language. If learners are not allowed to use, like, L1, then, well, like, L2 language, like, might, like, dominate. Okay. And also, on maybe, like, might what, like, results in thought, or, like, ideas that, okay, like, maybe my L1 is not good enough, something like that. Yeah, well, it is possible. Yeah. So, like, with all the reasons, okay, it is high time to integrate or to reintegrate, because, like, translation, like, was used, like, for centuries, like, before it was banned. Okay, to reintegrate translation in language teaching. Okay, now the last one, re-embracing, like, translation. Okay. Okay, what we need to do, like, to do this. Okay, language scholars and instructors, like, need to be more open to translation and learn more about it. Okay, like, it is sometimes, sometimes, like, what, is very shocking to hear, like, people, from like, language teaching, like, comments, or, like, remarks, like, on translation. For instance, like, when I went, like, to a conference in Australia, because I was going to what, like, to present about translation. Someone, like, said to me, so you must be what, like, a supporter, like, of GTM. That was, like, like, it was a bit shocking. It really made me speechless. And, like, another, another language scholar, a doctor actually, said that, well, translation is not communicative. Like, it also, like, made me speechless, because, well, like, my further studies. Okay, well, I studied translation, like, for 6 years. Okay, for my further studies, and translation was never, like, what separated from the word communication. Okay, so, like, there are people out there who have a lot of conceptions about translation. They do not know what translation is. Yeah. And basically, it's just, if you think that translation is not communicative, it's just like writing. When, my students write, they're normally not aware that they're actually talking or speaking to an audience. And when you are not trained about translation, okay, you might also think that you are not talking to anyone. That's why it needs to be trained. Okay, it needs to be incorporated, in what our language education. Yeah. Okay, and then the second one, language teacher education programs need to be incorporate translation training and address the use of TILT, use of translation in language teaching and learning. Okay, and then conduct more research on how to apply TILT. Okay, because translation has been abandoned for so long, for decades, that there is only very little research on how to use translation in language teaching. Okay, well, in presentation, another conference, in England, someone was presenting about the use of translation in secondary secondary schools, because now with translation is compulsory in England, okay, in the UK, okay, and it is taught in secondary schools. Teachers didn't know how to teach translation, or to integrate translation, because they hadn't got any training in translation. Okay, so that also highlights the need for research on how to apply translation to language teaching. Okay, right, and then the next one, this is also important. Translation studies needs to be involved in research on translation in language teaching and learning. Okay. Well, I'm actually from translation studies. Okay, but then somehow I was forced, in language teaching, and then here I am doing translations in language teaching. Okay, so translation studies scholars have more knowledge about translation than most of what people in language teaching. Okay, so it is a very I think it's it makes sense that we need their help, but at the same time they has been very indifferent to the use of translation in language teaching. Firstly, they didn't do anything with the abandonment of translation in language teaching. They just let it happen. Okay, and then that's what Anthony Flim said. Okay, and then okay, let me have a look at my note. Okay, they also see that students with low language proficiency cannot translate, because translation studies normally normally aim at, in quotation, perfect translation. Okay, they also actually has a kind of native speakerism in a way. They also need to learn. Okay, then yeah, but they need to also change their perspective, that everyone can translate for everyday life. They don't have to be a translator, that can translate text at a professional level. Yeah, so basically there is a need of dialogue between translation studies and translation studies scholars and those from language teaching, foreign language teaching. All right. Okay. that's like, my last slide. Okay, let me conclude, like, my, oh, not yet. Let me conclude, like, my presentation. So translation has been marginalized for decades in the fields of language teaching and learning and has been unfairly treated. Okay. With our improved understanding of bilingualism and multilingualism, rehabilitation of translation is necessary. There is much work, of course, ahead for this, but translation deserves that much attention. Okay, so thank you. Terima kasih matur nuwun for your attention. I'm also multilingual. Okay, and then these are the references. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bu Titi, for sharing your insight and opinion on translation, yeah, and of course the multilingual turn. And I agree with you that it is impossible to separate L1 and L2 from each other in translation. And I'm a bit speechless, yeah, Bu Titi, when there is a statement that translation is not communicative. And I don't know, perhaps we can, discuss more about your opinion, how translation has been marginalized, yeah? Okay, thank you, Bu Titi. Now let's come to our second speaker, Ibu Laurencia Sumarni, Master of Translation Study. Bu Marni is a lecturer of English Language Education Study Program in Universitas Sanata Dharma. She earned her bachelor degree from the English Language Education Study Program, Universitas Sanata Dharma, and earned her Master of Translation Studies from the Australian National University. Her research interest is translation in language teaching. Bu Marni is going to share about translating, the fifth skill for the 21st century learner. Bu Marni, if you're ready for the next 25 minutes, the screen is yours. Hello, Bu Marni.
Hello. Thank you so much for the introduction, Bu Mia. Wait. First of all, I'd like to send my warmest greetings and thankfulness and gratitude to Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa, the rectors, vice rectors, deans, vice deans, head of study program, lecturers, and the committee. Thank you so much for having me. And for the fellow panelists, Chayo, and for beloved participants and audience, thank you so much for having me. Today, I'd like to talk about translating, the fifth skill for 21st century learners. When we talk about translation, we talk about three things actually. We talk about hardware, software, and brainware. And since I'm a teacher of English, teachers of English, on my day job, I'm a teacher, and my night job is a translator. So I'm going to combine both. I'm going to talk about more on the brainware. Okay. Let me share my slides. Okay, so this is the title. Let me introduce myself. My name is Marni, and I'm an English teacher and a freelance translator by night. I work at Sanata Dharma University, the English Language Education Study Program, and it's an honor to be with you today to share my thoughts on translation in language teaching. So today I'd like to organize my talk into three parts. The first one is why should we re-embrace translation? I'm going to use the word re-embrace so that Bu Titi and I can talk about the same thing. Re-embracing, re-incorporating, reinstating, re-adopting translation in our language teaching. And then the second one is what can translation do and how it is incorporated in our language teaching. Wait, let me. Okay. This is Indonesia. Indonesia is a multilingual and multicultural country. We have 729 living languages. Amazing, right? And this is the the distribution of languages in Indonesia, local languages, 729. Papua has the biggest number of local languages. This is an amazing fact about our country. Okay, So Indonesia is a multilingual society, multilingual community. One person, or maybe just me, for example, I am bilingual. I speak trilingual, actually, trilingual. I speak Indonesian, I speak English, and I speak Japanese. And most Indonesian people are bilingual, trilingual, or even multilingual. They can speak more than one language. They speak the first language or a second language before learning a foreign language. However, as Bu Titi has mentioned earlier, that we have a monolingual method of English learning and teaching. So the instruction in the classroom is more monolingual. It means that the target language is the object and the medium of instruction. And the mother tongue is only used when it's difficult to say it in target language. And of course, the native language, the first language is excluded from the classrooms. Yeah, so this is the monolingual bias in a multilingual society. Okay, the result, as can be predicted, because native language is not allowed to be used in the classroom. So students or foreign learners of English tend to be silent and claim to have a mental block against learning English as a foreign language that prevents them from actively engaging in the communication, in the teaching learning in the classroom. This is the result, research result by Dwyer in 2000. Habibur Rahim conducted research recently investigating the students speaking anxiety English department in Aceh, in a university in Aceh. He found out that low self-confidence, lack of competency, and being afraid of making mistakes were some of the factors considered as the major causes of speaking anxiety. And this could debilitate students' classroom participation. Novianti in 2006 conducted a research, and she found that students have low receptive vocabulary scores below 2,000 words, which is very minimal because I think the range should be above 4,000 words. Okay, why should we re-embrace translation? Why should we re-adopt translation in our language teaching? There are two documents that I found which strengthened the idea of incorporating translation in language teaching. The first one is the document from Common European Framework of Reference for Languages, or CEFR, 2001. In order to get to C2 level, that is the highest one, students have to be able to demonstrate these following ability. Number one, appreciates fully the socio-linguistic and socio-cultural implications of language used by native speakers and can react accordingly. Number two, can mediate effectively between speakers of the target language and that of his or her community of origin, taking account of socio-cultural and socio-linguistic differences. This implies that mediation is through translation and interpreting. Yeah. And then the second document is by ad hoc committee report on foreign languages issued by the Modern Language Association of America in 2007. It says that there is a great unmet demand for educated translators and interpreters. And translation is an ideal context for developing translingual and transcultural abilities as an organizing principle of the language curriculum. So these two documents support the reinstating of translation in language teaching. Another fact is that English is a lingua franca. This is the means of communication used by multilinguals all over the world. This is like the uniting force, uniting language to communicate across the globe. The fact in our world now is that we have 1,121,000,000 speakers of English, native and non-native. And English is the most widely spoken language in the world. Out of that 1 billion plus, there are 378 million native speakers, while the non-native speakers exceed like double, 743 million non-native speakers, including you and me. Yeah, and from that number, Chana Garaja conducted a study 30 years ago, that 80% of English teachers are non-native English language teachers. I think in 30 years, the number must exceed 80% plus, yeah, including you and me, if you are English teachers. English is the dominant language on the internet. Nearly 54% of the content on the internet is in English. More than 50% of the world's technical and scientific periodicals are in English. You know, Scopus, right? And many other Scopus index journals. Okay, so this is the summary of the facts and figures. English is the most widely spoken language. Indonesia is at the bottom in this picture, but of course it's still more compared to other minor languages. Yeah, and this is the number of non-native English speakers, and 96% of communication is involving a non-native speakers. So a communication between native speakers only 4% of all the total communication. So it's an amazing fact regarding multilingual communities. Okay, so seeing the facts like that, what can translation do to maximize English language teaching to bridge intercultural communication? After you see the facts and figures, of course, we come to understand that there are a lot of non-native English learners and non-native English teachers, right? English learners does translate and translanguage all the time. Yeah, this is a common practice. As a learner, back when I was an English learner, I translanguage all the time. And I see in my class, my students also translate and translanguage all the time. What is translanguaging? Garcia defined it as the act performed by bilinguals of accessing different linguistic features of various modes of what are described as autonomous languages in order to maximize communicative potential. The Vice Dean and Bu Titi have mentioned that actually the purpose of translation is communication. So it is surprising if it is not considered communicative. So translanguaging and translating is utilized in the classroom in order to maximize communicative potential. So the purpose is still communication. Okay, the other definition or explanation about translanguaging is that it is a new languaging reality, a new way of being, acting, and languaging in a different social, cultural, and political context, allowing fluid discourses to flow and giving voice to new social realities. New social realities being multilingual, that we are all multilingual, there is no superior language or minor language. I mentioned that, sorry about that. Okay, so translanguaging implies that foreign language learners switch back and forth between their various linguistic repertoires to make meanings of the new language. This can also be done by mental translation. They process the input in the first language and produce the output in the target language. That is one example of translanguaging. Translation allows bilingual and multilingual 21st century learners to translanguage in order to make meanings, to partake in global communication. Once again, the purpose is always on meaning. The purpose is always on making ourselves intelligible in global communication. So translation, translanguaging, it is a means to an end. The end is mutual understanding and communication. Further, Baker posits that translanguaging is the process of making meaning, shaping experiences, gaining understanding and knowledge through the use of two languages. Translation and translanguaging, thus, are naturally occurring phenomena among the multilingual and multicultural 21st century learners. These are the facts of our learners now. They are multilingual, they are multicultural. You can imagine your neighbor has a 1-year-old daughter who is on YouTube all the time watching Korean songs, singing Korean songs, watching English movies, for example. They are our 21st century learners who are multilingual and multicultural. The linguistic repertoire serves as the prior knowledge or the prior knowledge to construct new knowledge and make meanings in order to function in a communication. Again, meaning, communication. Cook, this guy Cook, is the prominent advocate of translation in language teaching. He posits something like this, very, very, very good. Humans teach and learn by moving the familiar to the unfamiliar, by building new knowledge onto existing knowledge. Translation is just such a bridge between the familiar and the unfamiliar, the known and the unknown. To burn that bridge, or to prevent translation in that case, or to pretend that it does not exist, hinders rather than helps the difficult transition, which is the aim of language teaching and learning. Cronin even terms this age as translation age because translation offers the lens through which to view the transformation of communication in rapidly changing societies. For example, the intercultural and cross-cultural communication can proceed with the aids of translation and interpreting, right? Seminars, conferences, etc. They can proceed with the help of translation and interpreting. Knowledge transfer and science development is further enhanced with the help of translation. You can watch a video on YouTube in German language and it has the closed caption, so you can understand it. So somebody behind the back on the software, behind the scene has arranged everything so that people from across the globe can understand what the German scientist is talking about in their language. Yeah. The development of arts, theater, motion pictures, literature is disseminated by means of translation. Movies, novels, poems, any types of arts, they are disseminated by means of translation. So every day we are engaged in a translation mode, intralingually, interlingually, and intersemiotically. Learners are involved in translating and translanguaging every day, not only outside the class, but most of the time inside the class. Furthermore, Leonardi maintains that whereas translation is to be viewed as good bilinguals and lifelong language learners are meant to be natural translators who face this activity every day as students. So language learners are natural translators. Translation acts are natural translanguaging activities among the foreign language learners. Further, Mahbub asserts that the use of local languages, or L1, helps develop the conceptual understanding and basic learning skills of students. Thus, learning another language, or L2, will be easier with the help of local languages. So local languages can act as scaffolding and leverage for a successful L2 learning. Common European Framework of Reference for Languages integrates translation as the 5th language skill, in addition to listening, speaking, reading, and writing. This is Pim, Malmzeir, and Plana. They are prominent advocates for TILT. And the aim of language learning is thus an interculturally sensitive language communicator who can mediate between languages and cultures. In the Indonesian case, first languages can serve as the scaffolding to maximize the English language learning and to lay the foundation for the further acquisition of English vocabulary and grammar items so that foreign learners of English can communicate meaningfully and interculturally. So how teachers how are teachers going to incorporate translation in language teaching? How can we use that? Okay, first, we can use translation in classroom activities. Leonardi offers what we call pedagogical translation framework. So it's a classroom activities that are associated with the use of translation. Can be in a pre-translation activities like brainstorming, vocabulary preview, anticipation guides, question and answer to predict or to establish the student's level of prior knowledge. It can be in translation activities themselves. For example, reading activities, speaking and learning, writing, literal translation, summary translation, back translation, grammar explanation, vocabulary builder, etc. And it can also be applied in the post-translation activities like written or oral translation commentary, written or oral summary of the L1 text, written composition on the topic of the L1 text. Okay, and this one is from a website of the BBC. I will give you the link later. That learners can work on different sections of the text, and then they can regroup the text together to make a full text, for example, or they can talk about the L1 expressions and L2 equivalence, for example, or students can talk about proverbs text in Bahasa Indonesia and then present them in the text and talking about why they like them, and they can translate it into English. And then they can also work in groups on short text and then compare their versions. Yeah, for example, in translating Harry Potter, for example, they can work on short text and then compare the translation with the original. And then learners translate, the other learners back translate. Okay, and then they see why is it different. For example, I am worried today. It's translated into aku galau. But galau is not worried, right? So what is the difference between worried, khawatir, and galau or anxious? And they can discuss the shade of meaning like that. And learners can also do some error analysis of the software, like Google Translate, for example, hujan, kucing, dan anjing. Put it in the Google Translate and see what comes up. And you can, students can put some idioms or colloquial conversation into Google Translate and see what comes up and then discuss the errors, for example. And they can also compare the recipe in English and in Indonesia, because there are so many differences in the genre. Or in the email, for example, yang terhormat, of course, we cannot translate it into respectable or something like that. So we will have a discussion while comparing these texts and see how the target language works, how the generic structure of the target language works compared to our first language. And then they can translate the script of a scene and dub the scene in the L2 or develop a web blog and so on. And so forth. I'm not going to read them all. Time is pressing. And then the second one is using translation techniques to test language areas and skills. Language areas here are grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation. They can use multiple choice, close, paraphrasing, or many other types of tasks. And for the language skills, they can divide into receptive and productive skills. So reading and writing, the receptive skill can be approached through translation assignment or translation task, while listening and speaking, the productive skills can be approached through interpreting approach in interpreting tasks. For example, consecutive and simultaneous interpreting. Yeah. Okay. Right. My experience. I will talk about my experience. I teach writing and vocabulary, speaking, reading, grammar, and translation and interpreting in my study program. For writing, for example, in writing about biography, I will ask my students to read all information about Katy Perry, for example, from English text, Indonesian text. And then after that, they can write the draft and collect the words that they will use in their biography. And the list of the vocabulary should be in bilingual so that they know what the meaning of the words actually are. And then after that, they can also collect some phrases and expressions to write biography in English. Yeah. And then for vocabulary, I usually ask my students to make bilingual word cards and paraphrasing some activities for communicative activities. For example, yesterday or a few days ago, we have an omnibus law, right? Omnibus law. I asked them to write what is that and why are people so excited about it. So I asked them to read Kompas, Kedaulatan Rakyat, Jakarta Post, and then they can paraphrase the result of their writing, the result of their reading, and then write down the vocabulary that they learn. Okay. And then for speaking, I ask my students usually to paraphrase. The paraphrase can be in L1 or L2. Yeah. So it is an intralingual translation or interlingual translation. I usually ask them to do that. Or comparing cultural and linguistic differences in greetings. We have different ways of greeting, like in Bahasa Jawa selalu bilang, Badai tindak pundi. Are we going to translate Badai tindak pundi into where are you going? Or is it just greeting, like good afternoon, good morning, and something like that? And also in thanking, in praising. Yeah? Indonesian people, when they are praised, they say, oh enggak kok, enggak cakep gitu ya. While actually when you are supposed to respond to greeting, you just say thank you in English, right? So this kind of linguistic and cultural differences can be a great topic in discussion in a speaking class, and students can also synthesize what they have read and then report it in a 1 or 2 minute speech. And then for reading, students can paraphrase, summarize, synthesize different texts into L1 or L2. For the grammar, always ask the students to translate grammar in context. And for translation and interpreting, of course, it's done. It's business as usual. Yeah, we use translation and interpreting, of course, in that class. Okay. Moving on to conclusions. So Indonesia is a multilingual society, but the language teaching approach is monolingual, resulting in the learner's mental block, speaking anxiety, and low receptive vocabulary score. Two documents, CEFR and MLA's recommendations suggest that translation be incorporated in the curriculum to prepare non-native English learners to partake in the global and multilingual communication. English is a lingua franca for non-native speakers of English to communicate with people of different cultures, different languages. Translation and translanguaging are naturally occurring phenomena in language learning. First language serves as a scaffolding and leverage for L2 learning. Non-native English learners are expected to be bilingual and bicultural. These are termed by Vermeer. Being aware of both L1 and L2 to perform a mediating role in global communication in the 21st century. So what can teachers do to prepare the non-native English learners? So I'm calling every English teachers to have these three things. Number one is to have a multilingual approach in language learning and teaching. Being tolerant for our students of using their native language as long as they work on communication and making meaning in the target language. Incorporating translation as the fifth skill in foreign language learning activities and tasks. So this can be done from lower level, medium level to upper level of learning. Yeah. And then using it as a testing tool to evaluate students' overall mastery of foreign language in terms of language areas, grammar, vocabulary, and pronunciation, and language skills, reading, listening, speaking, writing, blah, blah, blah. It is hoped that the multilingual approach in English language teaching will prepare the non-native English learners to be communicators and mediators in the 21st century multilingual communication. In turn, they will appreciate their own native languages and respect foreign languages in order to communicate interculturally at a global scale. These are the references I use. Thank you very much for your attention, Ibu Mia. I will return the screen to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bu Marni. Okay, and your arguments on how the importance of translation are interesting, yeah, and how translation play an important role to bridge intercultural communication. And Bu Marni also mentioned how local language can act as scaffolding to learn L2 English. Translation can be incorporated in language teaching, ya Ibu ya. The first one in classroom activities and also in as a testing tool. And thank you for sharing your experience also in the biographical writing and speaking, yeah, and how cultural differences can be interesting topic in speaking class. Okay, Bapak Ibu, dear participants, we are coming to the third presenter or speaker, Ibu Estri Oktarena Ikrarini, Sarjana Sastra MA. Ibu Rena is a lecturer of English Education Program in Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa. And currently she is the head of P3BI, Pusat Pelayanan dan Pelatihan Bahasa Inggris, Center of English Language Service and Training. She obtained both of her degree, bachelor and master from Universitas Gadjah Mada. This morning, Bu Rena is going to share about project-based translation, bringing real-life translation project to classroom. Bu Rena, the time is yours.
Thank you, Bu Mia. Wait, let me share my screen first. Good morning, dear participants, Bu Titi, as speaker, Bu Marni, Pak Dangin, Pak ABC, who has formally opened this sharing session. So this morning I will talk about project-based translation, bringing real-life translation project to classroom. Actually, as Bu Titi and also Bu Marni have both talked some theories in translation, so I tried to talk something more practical, which is I will try to share about my class that I teach in this semester, that is Practicum of Translating and Interpreting. So this class actually is the last coursework for our students in PBI UST who take translation as their optional course.
Bu Rena, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think your voice is not strong enough.
Okay,
Yeah, please turn up the
wait,
volume.
Yes, wait.
Thank
Sorry.
you. I'm sorry for interrupting.
No, it's okay. Wait, let me stop share first, and then I'll try to setting my. Sudah keras belum ya?
It's still the same, Ibu. Masih sama.
Oh, masih sama.
How about the position of your microphone? Where is it?
Udah sih sebenarnya.
Okay.
Wait.
I think
Sorry, Bapak Ibu.
it's better for you to speak louder, Ibu. Speak louder
Okay.
then. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so because in this semester we have to conduct all classes online due to the pandemic COVID-19. So I need to think about how I will conduct my class, especially the practicum of translating and interpreting, because actually the students are expected to have a real practice on translating and also interpreting. Well, I need to admit that actually in this semester, the students might not have any practices in doing interpreting, but I try to focus more on doing the translation. So there are some reasons why then I chose to have a project-based translation. It is different from the previous semester's classes. In this semester, I need to have more participation from my students, especially in the classroom activities. So I need to make the activities student-centered because this is an online class and this is a translation class. So actually, I cannot just give text to my students to translate again and again because they will be bored with all the tasks. So that's why I need to design a project that the students can work on the project during this semester. And at the end, I expect that the students will have a translation product that can be, can be published, or they can say that this is my translation work, the one that they can be proud of. And I also need to monitor the students' progress in translating the text, because if I'm just giving them some text to translate, then it is more difficult for me to monitor the progress because students usually submit only the result, the product itself, but not even when I ask them to make or to give some reflections on to update their progress, students sometimes are not willing to do that. So the other reasons why I also choose this project-based translation is because I need the students to learn in an authentic environment. I need to give them an experience to feel how to translate in a real project, how to deal with the client's needs, how to deal with the text. It is not only the text that they should submit only for grades, but the text that will be published, and so on. And from the studies that I have read so far, most of the studies mention that actually project-based learning suits the translation class well. I have found some, some articles that support this idea, like Curly in 2005 and also Kapnan in 2017. So then, I also have several considerations that I will put into this project. The first one, this project will be a student-centered learning activity. In this term, it means that the students themselves plan the task, they complete the task, and they themselves perform the task. So all the tasks in this translation project actually are conducted by the students. However, having this project also will become a challenging task for the students, and I need also to make this task challenging for them, and it will motivate them to do more, to do better in their translation process. And this challenging task also becomes the center of project and the learning process itself. While doing this project, the students also will need to ask or to give feedbacks from peers or for the peers and also from me as the teacher. And I might also ask some feedbacks from the writers or from the clients so that this project can be an opportunity for my students to share their ideas, to share resources they have throughout the process. These projects are can also be considered to be hands-on activities, as students most of the time need to work on this translation text even when they are translating, when they are revising, or when they are getting some feedbacks from others, like from their peers, from me, and also from the client. And this project also enables me to use an authentic resource and also technology. Well, by having or by building the students to work in this project, I expect that they will learn in a collaborative learning environment rather than a competitive one. So the students will try to have a good grade, not only from themselves, but also from the group as a whole, because at the end, it is their product that will be assessed. how well they translate, not only as an individual translator, but also as a group of translators. And then this project can also give them opportunities to use a variety of skills, social skills, management skills, translating skills, communicative skills, like Marnie and also Puriri have mentioned before. In this project, the students can also use some efforts in connecting their ideas and also in acquiring new skills during different stages of projects. Like in the beginning of the project, the students might need to develop their communicative skills when they are beginning in which task that they need to work on, how they divide the tasks among them, and so on. While on the process of translating, the students might need to develop or to use their efforts in translating the text, in communicating the ideas from L1 to L2 and others. And then by using this project, I also expect to produce a meaningful artifact, which is the translation product. And this product actually can be published and shared to their peers, to teachers, or even to public. This product can be used also as an assessment in both the work during the process of translating from the first stage to the last stage, and the final, the finished project itself. So there are some key features that actually I will use in this translation project that I ask my students to work on. So what translation project? At the beginning of this semester, I talked to one of Indonesian language lecturers, one of our colleagues in UST, and I asked whether they have a text that can be translated into English. Why I chose an Indonesian written text, because maybe it is easier for me to ask for permission, and also I want to give different experience to my students to work on this translation project. So they will translate a module, a teaching module from Indonesian language to English language. And when I saw the module itself, when I read the module itself, I found that the module is written in plain Indonesian language. The language is quite simple, quite easy, and I'm sure that actually my students will not, lots of difficulties to translate the module itself. The module consists of 54 pages, and I have 6 students in my class who take this class. And I expect that the project will be finished at the end of this semester, because we're going to publish the translation project as a translated book or a translated module. And then the CAD tool or the computer assisted tool that I will use or that we are using in this project is MemSource. Maybe some of you are not familiar with this CAD tool. So this is a computer-assisted translation tool, and we usually work online. Last week, I asked for an academic subscription. So this is a subscription that can be used for universities or for schools for teaching or for having some translation classes. And by having this academic subscription, we are able to use all the translation features that the MemSource has. So by using this one, I can act as a project manager, and the students can act as linguists or as the translators, so they call the translator linguist. And then I can share what tasks that my translators will need to do. And then during the process, I can monitor their works either on, by using the monitoring feature that we have in the MemSource. And I also found out that actually this tool is user-friendly. I mean that the features are not too complicated, because I have also used like WordPress and also tried to use Stratus, and I found that some students are getting difficulties while using them. So when I use this, when I found this mentors tool, I hope that this will be better for my students. And the other aid that I will use for managing this class is Zoom. Actually, I will use this for monitoring, giving for feedback, and also coordinating, because actually we'll need to work online. Okay, so how the project is conducted. This project is conducted first by asking permission from the module writers so that the manuscript can be translated into English, and we already had that. And then in the next step, my students and I agreed on having a translation project throughout this semester, and they are eager to do that. I will show you at the result of my survey before we start this project. And then I asked also the students to on how they will perform their projects. I give some, some freedoms to my students to divide the task, to share the task among them. And then I found out that actually my students are able to assign themselves in the project task. They divide the task, they share the task among themselves without me, interrupting the process. So they just report to me that they have assigned themselves in this task by translating different parts of the module. Okay, so this is how our translation work performed. So first, we will learn using mentors. So we learn using mentors by using Zoom meeting and also by assessing the mentors web, and then we also assign tasks by using mentors. So the task will be assigned among these translators, and I will act as a project manager. And then we need also to set the time frame from for the progress update, monitoring, getting feedback, and finishing the project. This one are the steps that we are working now. And then after we have finished with this one, the students will translate the text independently. They can do it online and offline, because the mentors actually also make it possible for them to work offline by installing the applications on their computer. And then during the process, I also need to do some monitoring activities, and the students might need to edit their translation project, so that after we finish with this one, we will have the project finished. After we finish all the projects, I need the student also to make some reflections on how they work on this project, as this is also part of their learning process. And at the end, I plan to publish this translation product as a module or as a book, setting that the students as the translators. So before I assigned this project to my students, I had a little small survey to my students, and in one question, all the students say that actually they are eager to work on this translation project, and I'm thankful for that. The students are also willing to finish this project, and they also say that they are willing to prepare themselves to study for conducting the project and to seek for assistance from others in case of any problems. However, some of my students also mentioned that they feel less confidence because most of the time they will need to work independently. They're not sure whether they can meet the deadline or not, or whether their translation skill is sufficient for this project or not. However, by asking them to work in a group, I expect that the students can motivate each other. The students can share their knowledge, they can share their experience while they are translating the text, or they can also share their problems among one another. So by doing this, I hope that this project can run well. So there might be some challenges that we will have when we do this project. The first one, as the students translate a text from Indonesian to English, it means that they will need to apply their advanced level of English skills. Students may need also to develop good communication skills, because these skills are not only to communicate among their group members, but also to communicate the ideas from the source text to the target text. In working on this project and using the CAD tool, the students might need to have a good technical skills in using the internet, in working with computers, in editing some documents, and also to use mentors while they are translating. The other challenge that we might have is the time issue. While some of my students have already said that they don't feel certain that they can work within a time frame independently, we might need to think on how we can make sure that everyone is in good track within the time frame that we have set. And also we need to compromise not only within our groups, but also with the client, and when we have to finish this project. And because we plan to finish the project at the end of this semester, so there will be some compromising between me as the teacher and also my students about how we will work within this project. So actually, what I expect, or what can be expected from this translation project, the first thing that I expect is that the students can develop their translation knowledge and skills. As the students working on this translation project, they are translating the text. They need to develop their translation knowledge and skills, and also their language skills. As I mentioned before, that this kind of project needs their advanced level of language skills. And while they are dealing with this project, when they are dealing with the task itself, students can also develop their metacognitive knowledge related to translation. And the most important thing is that I expect the students can feel how to work in a real-life translation work. And this is the main point of having this project-based translation, is that to bring this real-life work, to bring the real-life situations to my classroom, to make the students feel how to work as a translator. Because it is not only submitting their translation as their assignment, but also they need to feel responsible to the client to make sure that their translation product is a good one to be published. And also, I need also the students to learn the real life skills, group work, autonomous learning, time planning, self-assessment, and others. And for our institution itself, I wish that actually, I hope that actually by having this published translation product of the students, it will give some benefit to our study program. So what I can sum up from this presentation is that we hope that by having this translation project, students can develop not only their translation knowledge and skills, but especially their metacognitive, and also how can we incorporate translation into our classroom by bringing the real life projects into my students, or as my students' assignments. Thank you everyone for listening to my presentations. Good morning, salam Bumia. The time is yours.
Thank you, Burena. Okay, I agree, yeah, that the most important is to give a real life experience to our student. And I guess the translation project using the mem source is very interesting and also beneficial, Burena. It is an opportunity, yeah, for the student to share ideas using authentic resources and of course technology, because they need to incorporate their language competence and digital literacy. Yeah? I hope that the project runs smoothly until the publication. And I also believe that you and your student can overcome the challenges of this project. I guess the key is communication. Okay, now let's come to our last speaker, last but not least, yeah. We have Pak Dangin, Sarjana Pendidikan, M.Hum from Universitas Mercu Buana, Yogyakarta. Pak Dangin was born in Blora, 1991, oh yeah, it's quite young. He earned his bachelor degree from Islamic University of Indragiri Riau and his Master of Humaniora from Universitas Sanata Dharma. And his research interests include self-regulated learning, translation, and educational technology. This morning, Pak Dangin is going to share about cultural translation, current issues, and challenges. Pak Dangin, are you ready?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because I'm young.
Oh my God.
Okay.
That's a compliment. Pak Dangin,
Okay.
the time is yours.
Okay, thank you, Bu. Good morning, all. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, firstly, I'd like to thank you for the committee and the keynote speakers for the sharing. Honestly, I got some new things from your presentation, and maybe it's going to be a short presentation because some of my topics have been delivered by Bu Titi and Bu Marni. So maybe I just add up what they have presented. Yeah, today I'm bringing up cultural translation because, wait, I would like to, okay. Okay. Actually, this topic, I intend this topic to some students and maybe new translator because it is the basic thing, cultural translation, and hopefully the audience or some of audience, they are the students and also those who try to be translator. Okay, starting from the title, cultural translation. Yeah, maybe some people will say that, oh wow, we translate the culture, or okay, we translate something related to the culture. Yeah, maybe some of you are right, but yeah, first time I read cultural translation it's been what? It was 6 years later when I studied at Sanata Dharma University. My lecture is Pismoko. Yeah, I'm interested on culture because I live nomadically. So far, maybe I speak 6 languages: Banjarnese, Malay, Japanese, and what else? English, and also the last one is Sundanese, but unfortunately I forget the Sundanese itself. So that's one of my reasons why I'm interested on the culture itself. And before we start the topic, first thing, to define the culture and translation, I cite Haris Trivedi from India. He is a professor there. In 2007, he tried to criticize the term of cultural translation because it's related to post-colonialism and postmodernism, and he tried to criticize Baba about the translation itself. And yeah, I do quite agree with Trivedi because we cannot translate culture, but we can deliver the message from culture and another culture to culture. That's my point of view. And first, we should define the culture itself. In my perspective, there are two important things in defining culture. The first is about, culture can be about civilized society. Yeah, we talk about the human, the people, about the civilization. We can talk, we can define culture as this thing. And another way, we can define culture as the ways of life or a set of behavior. It means that we learn their tradition, we learn their ways of life. We call it culture itself. And the next is, oh, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Okay, next is about translation. Honestly, my favorite author about translation is Anthony Pym, Catton, and also some Nida. But in translation, I try to define the translation itself because Bu Titi and Bu Marni already mentioned the translation. Yeah, maybe I just add up something. The function of translation itself is to communicate the receptor audience. It means there's audience, and we give the informations from the target source language to the target language. Our target language, we define target language as audience, so we should consider that. And actually, in my research with my team, we try to deconstruct Harmer's diagram because she replaced philosophy, so we try to propose a communicative functional philosophy of translation, because the thing that we should concern on translation is about communication, communication by text. And if like Martin said, if we cannot do communication using text, we just write down something. And as translator, we cannot do that, because we are the mediator of the message itself. So that's why I consider translation as a communicative thing. And then next, what does it matter? I remember Anthony Pym once, wait a minute. Anthony Pym once in 2010, he said that it's important because it's increasing independence in corporate nations that's into wider culture networks. It means we live in globalization era. I mean, we live in global era. We will face multicultural, internationalism, nationalism, and we try to we mix them, we blend them, but we should have our own culture. We should keep the source culture, and we try to communicate the source culture into target culture as the digestible information. That's the matter. Yeah, it's quite simple, but in practicality, yeah, it's quite sophisticated, because next is about from Katan 2004. Yeah, it's still about definition of culture itself, cultural translation. I try to point the important thing to keep in mind is that interpretation conveys message in way appropriate to language and culture framework involved. Yeah, that's what I mean. As translator or beginner, as me, I consider myself as a beginner or newbie in translation. That's why I should keep in my mind that translating is not only you translate source language to target language, but I try to keep the message, but in appropriate way. That's my point of view about translation. Next, issues. I got from Katan 2004 and Adam Glass 2019. The current issue of cultural translation itself is about globalization. We call it multicultural, can be, or intercultural, yeah, because some people. Once I have friends, maybe 3 years ago, I had friends from I forget, from Europe. I think he is Chinese. He conducted research for his PhD in anthropology. He asked me to accompany him related to tumpang, and my friend as well. We were 3 people there. There is a mini book related to the explanation of tumpang. Once my friend from Indonesia tried to translate the text. First thing about tumpang, yeah, tumpang. My friend directly as tumpang is corn rice, and then blah 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 directly without any explanation or something else. And then I asked my friends, why do you say that? Yeah, because in Google Translate, or you can find in dictionary, yeah, tumpang, the shape of tumpang is kerucut. Yeah, kerucut is corn, and then it's made by rice. So why not we just translate in corn rice? Yeah, it's something interesting for me, because wow, you just to simplify this thing. But yeah, maybe in lexical or word by word, my friend could translate it in the correct way, but I'm not sure about the method itself, method of tumpang itself. That's why I tried to describe tumpang as I could to my Danish friend, and yeah, for him it's quite acceptable if we, as an interpreter or translator, we understand the culture, the source culture. We know more about source culture, because in some diction or some tradition, we cannot translate it just word by word. We should deliver the message in appropriate way. We keep the message, but we make it digestible to the target audience. That's the issue for me. And next, okay, the challenges. Yeah, the challenges like what I have said before. For example, me, I live in 5 different cultures. I mean, in Indonesia, I have lived in Javanese people, Banjarnese, Malay, and also Sundanese, and the last one is Padangnese. So from that one, if I'm gonna be a translator, it's kind of challenge for me to understand their culture. First is about their language. So at least I should understand their language, the pattern and the structure or grammatical word from the culture, and then about the culture itself, tradition, and because some people, for example, in Banjar, in Sunda we call it China amis, but in Javanese amis is the smell of fish. So it's quite contradiction, but if we understand the culture, we can transform the meaning of amis itself. Okay, amis means sweet, but I mean here means the smell of face, for example, like this one. And also it's also for culture stance, because we talk about culture, so we cannot translate something just on the text. We translate word by word, and we neglect the culture terms itself. So I think the challenge is like this, and it's essential for us as the beginner of translator. So we should understand, we should keep in mind that translating is not only about word by word or sense of word. We should understand also the meaning, the meaning in this culture. And yeah, even it's too old, maybe 1998, but for me it's quite interesting for me, because the diagram from Newmark, we can adapt these things, word by word translation, and then literal translation, faithful translation. Faithful translation here, some students or some new beginner, they interpret faithful as wanting something is absolute. For example, what else? Big house, because they interpret faithful of translation, or faithful of target language. They say besar rumah rather than rumah besar. You should understand for beginner. We should understand that the grammatical rule of particular language or country, they have different. In Malaysia, especially, Malaysia have different grammatical patterns to Indonesia. So we should understand this one. And then next is semantic translation and communicative translation. Idiomatic. Idiomatic means we should understand we should give a deeper understanding of this one. And the last one is adaptation. I think that's all for me, because all in my mind already mentioned by previous speakers. So I think that's all. Thank you. And I forget. Ibu, time is the screen is yours.
Thank you, Pak Dangin, for a very insightful information about challenge and issue in translation. And you mentioned about the definition, how the definition of cultural translation is challenged, And there are two important things in translation, as a civilized society and ways of life and set of behavior. And as a beginner translation, we need to understand the context and keep the message as original as possible. When you mention in different words, of course, the appropriate ways. Perhaps later on you can confirm, is it as original as possible, or I don't know, keeping the message clear, And then, of course, the challenges is understanding the various cultures. In Indonesia, we have local cultures, and of course the translation competence itself. And I guess that way I can conclude from Pak Dangin. And now we come to second session, the question and answer session. I have some question already in the chat box, and later on, if you want to ask directly to the speakers, you can push the raising hand button, And now I think I have the first question from Pak Ansel. This question is to all speakers, so perhaps later on, all of the speakers can take turn to answer question, To all speakers, in line with your presentation today, I refer back to the same question: what's hot and what's not in translation nowadays? Okay, I guess Bu Titik perhaps can deliver the argument, or perhaps answering the question directly. Bu Titik?
I don't think I can, I can't answer this because I haven't been in touch with translation studies, like, for a while. But, like, at least, like, what is hot now is, of course, like, the issues that we have brought forward about the use of translation in language teaching, because it's also, like, what, like, in relevant, like, for translation studies. And what's not probably, like, the what, like, the concept of equivalence. Yeah, like, equivalence, like, in translation studies has been abandoned. So if you what, like, talk about equivalence, like, it has been used, like, all the time in the what, like, in the discipline, like, it's not hot anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, because in line with your argument, yeah, translation need to have the same portion in language teaching field.
Yeah, right. Yeah, translation studies, like, absolutely, like, need to what, like, to have a dialogue, like, with language teaching scholars.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. How about Bu Marni? Marni, what do you think?
Yeah, okay. Thank you, Bu Mia, for the questions. Well, I have mentioned earlier that in translation, there are three kinds of things that we can talk about. It's the software, the hardware, and the brainware. So I guess what is hot right now is the development of these three things. Yeah, what is hot? For example, we have machine translation, artificial intelligence, and then these things are thought to replace translators, human translators. But of course, behind all this software and hardware, we have the brainware, namely translators, right? So just because we have software and hardware, it doesn't mean that human translators are replaceable, are dispensable. It doesn't mean that. So what is hot right now is still on developing students' brainware. And as I have mentioned, and Bu Titi has mentioned earlier, that our struggle now, and it is recognized by all the documents like CEFR and MLA, that translating is the ultimate language skill. So to judge whether someone is proficient in English or not, translating, or in this case, in their word, it's mediating skill. Mediating in this case is translating and interpreting. So what is hot in translation? Of course, in terms of software, hardware, we know some machine translation, artificial intelligence, and some other resources that we can use to replace translators, to replace human translators. Yeah, okay. But in terms of brainware, there is still a lot of things that we have to do to develop this, to prepare our future generations to be human, competent human translators. And in the future, I think the challenge is going to be different from our challenge nowadays. But if we stop training translators, if we stop training English language learners, this skill, I'm sure the skill will be extinct in the future. That's why it is our job as translators, as language teachers, to keep hammering it down, banging the drum that this is important. So this is the hot things in translation. Yeah, and then what is hot? I think who Titi has mentioned. Yeah, the monolingual bias towards translation and the narrow definition of translation. That translation is more than just replacing one word in language A to another word in language B. And this is not hot in translation. Yeah, so this is something that we have to raise awareness to the people who don't think that translation is communicative, right? So that mindset is not hot. So you have to abandon that mindset. All right. So this, I guess those things that I have mentioned are what is hot and what is not in translation. So I hope I answer Pak Anselmus's question. Thank you, Bu Mia.
Oh, may I add, like, Bu, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
Bu Titi.
Yeah. Another thing that is hot, I think, like, is the application of pragmatics in translation, because translations is interdisciplinary, like, studies, and, like, what, and the discipline of pragmatics also, like, developing, and there is a need to incorporate, like, the development, like, in pragmatics into translation. That was actually part of my PhD study. And although, like, I haven't been in touch, like, with my topic anymore, but, like, my work has been continually cited. So, and there are what more works, like, about it, especially about the division between explicit and implicit meanings, because, like, in order, like, that would be very important, like, for teaching what, like, translators to be, okay, because it's also about meaning implication. Okay, like, for instance, like, it's in my class, for instance, like, it's difficult, like, well, sometimes you need to write the meaning implication rather than, like, the what, the person says, but then, like, my students write something that is too far or probably too close, yeah, something like that. Yeah, I think that's from me. Yeah.
Thank you, Bu Titi. How about Bu Rena? What do you think about this question? What is your opinion, Bu Rena?
Yeah, thank you, Bumia. Thank you, Pansa, for the questions. Actually, because I speak from the point of view of the practical thing of translation, so I might also give you some answers from practical point of view. I mean, what is hot now when we consider this online time, when we have to do all things online, then we can also see that nowadays people mostly watch movies on Netflix and what is it, Disney and Hotstar, for example, or other TV cable programs. And you can see that actually there are lots of subtitling projects that the students or translators can work on. This is very hard actually in translation, especially in Indonesia nowadays, because mostly the movies are translated only into what is it? If they have like the audio might be only in English. But what if the translator act also as interpreter? I mean, what if we also give, we translate not only by written, but also by using voice? Because like my kid, she always say that, Mom, why don't you find something with an Indonesian voice? I don't need to read all the subtitle text or something like that. So this is a big work for translators nowadays. So this is very hard actually nowadays when we talk about online, when people watch more movies now than at the old times. So this is a big work for. And what is not in the translation, I think, if we talk about our students, is that if we force them to work in a project like that they're maybe not willing to work on. That's why at the beginning of this class, I asked the students, what if in this semester we translate a module and then we publish the module to be your translation product? I really appreciate what the students responded to my questions. When they said no, then I might try another thing on how to conduct my class. So I mean, translation is not only how we can communicate our ideas, but when we talk about how to incorporate this into our classroom, then the most important thing might be the students' willingness to do the translation process itself. Sometimes the students might not be willing to do this because they think that I think I'm better having this Indonesian text rather than having the English ones. Or when we ask our students to read the English novels, maybe we often being asked like, well, do you have the Indonesian version or something like that? So I think our students' willingness is also something which should be which should be highly considered and also appreciated when we come into translation itself, when we incorporate translation into our classroom. Thank you, Pak. Thank you, Bu Mia.
Okay, quite, what is it? I agree, yeah, with Bu Rena opinion when what's not hot in translation. How about Pak Dangin? What do you think, Pak Dangin?
Bu Vita, wait a minute. Okay, actually, I do agree with Bu Titi, Bu Rena, and especially Bu Marmi, because when we talk about translation, we talk about communication. So I think it's not hard here because I think, yeah, something's not hard because some translators, they just translate word by word. I think it's really, really not hard. And maybe Mari say abandon it. I say maybe just replace it. Actually, we have the same idea, Mari. And for me, the hot issue here in translation, because in phenomena, my students especially, or some friends, they are fresh graduate. They try to be translator. They tend to rely on technology. They try to rely on technology, and they automatically they forget the principle itself. So that's why I bring up cultural translation here, because it's the foundation. Because technology is instrument, is not our yeah, it's just about instrument. So in using instrument, we should have foundation or basic things to use it. That's I think hot issue for me, because actually I'm a general manager as well in my department, and some authors there or some researchers there, I found that they translate the word by word. When I try to review the meaning, I cannot get the meaning. So I think it's it's not hard, but it's a hard issue for me as educator. So I think how to we get back the foundation and how to maximize the technology. I think that's the hard issue by Ansel. Thank you, Vita.
Thank you, Pak Dangin, for the answer. Yeah, yes. Seeing that case, I guess our students rely too much on technology. Yeah, without using themselves as an expert. Yeah. And now let's go to the second question. I think I found something in the chat box from Ibu Wulan Hestiningsih. She mentioned that usually I ask my student to translate their favorite song, but in fact, we can find the translation on the internet. Then if I ask them to translate book, they do not interested. Is there any way to motivate them? Nah, I think that is our challenges, yeah, as educator. So what do you think, Bapak Ibu?
All right, I might be able to answer a bit because I've been teaching translation for a while. Okay, like it is now it is a challenge, in teaching translation with finding material, because a lot of materials are available online, the translation. And if you the students can can access the internet, they can use Google Translate to translate it. So my one of my trick is, if for instance use a song, for instance, let your students keep their mobile, keep their handphone put it away, so they cannot access the internet, so they can independently translate the material the song. If you really want them to learn how to translate songs, understand that problem. Okay, like, and also like, during like, a test, I also like, do that too. Sometimes I have to make like, my own material, but if you, like cannot do that, then, do it, like not like a dictator, but, like, to keeping away, like, like, the mobiles. Yeah. And then the next one, which one? Oh, translating a book. It really depends on the level of the like the translation course or the translation. The aim of the translation activities. If you give like book translation for an introduction to translation, I think that's too much. Okay, like if like an introduction to translation, you might just want to assign students with a chapter like at the end of the book, at the end of the book, at the end of the course, because like the when you teach translation, the goal is not the quantity of the book, although you might want to do that for publication or something like that, but probably that's for high level like students. Okay, for like for an introduction, for instance, like you might just want them like to translate like a short like a short word text. So like you can have a look how they translate, look at like their strategies, okay, and also yeah, deal like with what technical things, okay, rather than like what just ask them like to translate a long book, but you cannot do it like the whole things and cannot give feedback. Giving feedback to students translation can be very, very demanding. Okay, like what I've been teaching translation for probably like 7 years, maybe more than 7 years. It like it takes a lot of my time to give feedback, to be able like to help your students that learn about their mistakes. Okay, like it's not only about grammar. Grammar is probably secondary, although you can use language focus like to help like their language learning. But you like for instance about yeah, like but like meaning, the mediation of meaning, and also like the issues related to the coherence of the text. Indonesians, for instance, like tend to repeat words. For instance, Budi dan Ani pergi ke pasar. Kemudian probably we might in Indonesian you mentioned like the names again, but English like really doesn't like it at all. So like the coherence also like change, also like changes when you translate. So basically translation can be seen as a type of rewriting. Is a reproduction. So like when you teach translation, it's in a way like teaching writing in a way, because like you reproduce it like in another language. It's like writing if you write, okay, but it's just in another language. But you need to change to consider like a lot of pragmatic factors, yeah, not only technical like strategies of translation, like the inclusion of context, the consideration of audience, okay, whether like the what do you call that, the scopus, or the like the goal of translation has shifted or not. Okay, for instance, if you ask like your students to translate a manual, but then like the audience like different, then like everything like would also change. Okay, so basically again for me it's not on the objectives of your translation. Yeah, I think that's from me. Thank you.
It's a very good strategy, yeah? But when we need to put away the student mobile phone or alienated them from their technology. I think it's very possible if we in our normal condition, but right now in a pandemic, in the new normal, it's a bit impossible to to alienate them
That's
from
right,
the
you can't. I
technology.
did that in my, like face-to-face meeting.
Yeah, now I think that's our challenge right now. Yeah, when we and not only in the translation, actually, how we can focus on our student competence, and just like Bu Marni said, that we need to hammering them, yeah, their motivation, how they can learn, yeah, in ideal situation. And right now, thank you, Bu Titi, yeah. I think we have another question. There is a question from Bu Ratno, but actually already answered by Bu Marni in the chat box, yeah. And there is also a question from Pak Nanang, Pak Nanang P, if I'm not mistaken here. How university preparing students to face translation challenge in a translation industry, yeah? Which is no longer bound to conventional text, but moving forward to digital areas, where it needs to, translate or localize, or what is PPC? What is PPC? Or website or content, yeah, web content. I think anyone can answer to this or respond to this question, or perhaps Bu Marni?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Bu Mia. I'd like to add some maybe some additional answers to the previous questions, if I may. So I'm going to address two questions. The first one is about song. A few semesters ago, I taught translation, and I used translating song as one of the progress test assignment. So I asked the students to translate Indonesian campur sari songs into English, and I gave them some theories on how to translate songs, right? So you have to consider the rhythm, you have to consider the how many beats, the number of syllables, and so on. And then after that, the students have to perform the songs like Bojoku Gala, you know, what else? Some other campur sari songs, I don't remember, Suketeki or whatever. And then after that, we analyze the translation of the Javanese words into English. And there were so many things that we learned, cultural translation, as mentioned by Pak Dangin, so rich discussion on the translation of Javanese words into English, especially when we consider the rhythm, the rhyme, the beats, and the singability of the song, and so on. Yeah. So maybe Ibu siapa yang tadi nanya ya, you can use that my kind of activities to motivate your students to translate Indonesian songs into English, yeah, or English songs into Indonesian, and you give some challenges into how to make it singable into Indonesian songs, yeah. Okay. For example, the word "you are my fire" is translated into Japanese "kowe geniku." You know, it's not easy to find the same words which has the same syllables as in English, right? So it is very challenging. For the book translation, I agree with Bu Titi that quantity, it's not about quantity, but it's about quality. Yeah. Usually we think about how many credits do the students have, and if it is only a short assignment, then we kind of limit the work, the number of words or the word count of the text. So we usually refer back to the curriculum. We refer back to this course outline. How many credits is it? And how many % of the total assignment is the book translation? So usually I agree with Bu Titi, it's only one chapter or maybe a few pages of the text. Okay, and then for the last questions, Pak Nanang ya. To tell you the truth, Pak, we cannot address everything in a 3-credit course translation. Yeah, in my study program we have theories and practice of translation. We have 3 credits, and we have 5 topics, and the last topic is mixed mode, translation in mixed mode. So we have dubbing, we have subtitling, we have voiceover, and we have also localizing webs, ya, jangan diterjemahkan bahasa Indonesia, pelokalan web, ya. But only in terms of theories, and we usually invite some translators from an translation agency to be the guest speakers, so that they can talk more deeply in practical way of what in the translation industry looks like, and what it requires of the from the students. So I admit that as a lecturer, I could only give some theories, some practical knowledge based on my experience, and we do our best to invite some guest speakers who can enlighten more to our students. Yeah, so that's all I can say about it. So maybe other panelists can answer that question. Thank you very much, Bumia. Back to you.
Thank you very much, Bu Marni. Okay, how about the other panelists or the other speakers? Do you have any other opinion? Perhaps Pak Dangin, perhaps want able to add some infos about the translation
I think
programs
what
or software.
Bu Mari said is already complete. So just go on, Bu.
Okay. How about you, Bu Rena? Because now it's a bit it's related to your classroom project, yeah, the translation project. Bu Rena, we cannot hear your voice yet.
We can't hear you.
Wait, let me do something first. It's actually there is a very soft voice, yeah, before you mute it. Nah, while we are waiting for Bu Rena, I'm looking for the question in the chat box.
Yeah, hello, Bumia.
Oh, hi, Bu Rena. Welcome back.
Yeah, well, I think our study program, yeah, we university might need to prepare the students to work on digital areas, and the one thing that I can do with my translation class is to teach them how to translate using CAT tools or computer assisted translation tool, like MemSource, like what I'm using this semester, and then WordFast, Trados. Trados is usually used by professional translators, but the free version is not very much. It doesn't have a complete feature, so maybe it might be. It might give some difficulties when the students using Trados, and then because I think it is different while we are translating conventionally using Microsoft Word, for example, and using translation tools. In translation tool, we can build what we call as translation memories, and then we can use glossary. So the CAD tools actually can help us as a translator to keep our linguistic style, because we have different linguistic style and it differs one translation product to another. So I think what we can prepare is also to introduce them to the real life translation by bringing authentic tasks to our classrooms, and then to introduce our students to CAD tools, the ones that is used by professionals. And I also sometimes ask the students to visit some translation agencies so that they know how translators works in a real translation world, yeah, like in working in a translation agency, what challenges that they might have, and then the nature of translator work while they are working with the translation agency. And also I think as teacher we can bring lots of various texts to our classrooms, not only conventional text, but also maybe some contents that we take from the website. And then maybe we can also bring like a movie, a short movie in English, and then we ask the students to translate the subtitles, for examples. In that way, they also will be familiar with different text translations. That's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Burena, for the response. Yeah, there is a lot of way to incorporate translation with language teaching, especially just like what Bu Marni mentioned previously about how we can use translation in our teaching activity or classroom activity.
Bu Adria, can I add a bit?
Of course, Ibu.
Yeah, probably because I think this is important because many of our audience might not what conversant about translation. Okay, so again, before we decide on the type of activities, we really need to have a look again at the objectives of our the activities and our course. I think if you teach language pre-service language teachers like me, because I'm based in an English language education, pendidikan bahasa Inggris. Okay, I don't what design didn't design my translation course because only 3 credits to include localization and things like that, because that's for professionals. So my focus is more on the basics of translation, and also how it can improve their English language. So also incorporate language focus in the translation activities. If you want to have a look at how I incorporate that, you can read my my paper about translation as a means and the end in language teaching for learning grammar. Yeah. So yeah, although it's about translation, of course, now it's not only about translating conventionally, but also localization, foreignization, and also localization. A lot of things in translation, depending on the what scopus or the objective of the communication. Okay, it's again we need to really consider the objective of our translation course. We don't have to go there if we teach translation translation if we teach translation to pre-service language teachers. But if we want it as an option for them for their career choices, and it is meant to be like that in curriculum, go ahead for the issue, the topics. Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome, Bu Titi. I think right now we still have a few more minutes. Bu Laksmi, what do you think? Do we still have enough time for one question? For looking at the time, yeah.
Sure, Bu Mia.
Okay, so I'm going to find a participant, yeah. If you're willing to ask question directly to the speakers, please push the raise hand button, and then our committee will unmute your microphone. Please help me if I miss someone because my screen is very limited here. Anyone? Bapak, Ibu? Do all participant? We have 4 speakers. Oh, Bu Veronica Widi. Okay, could you please open your camera? And
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, of course, loud and clear. Is it Mbak Vero?
Yes, it's me.
Wait, do you mind to open your camera?
Excuse me, actually, I'm in the middle of my work. So is it still okay if I just turn it off?
Okay, then.
Okay. Okay, I just want to ask about the perspective of translation itself. And I would like to ask you, Putiti or Bu Sumarni?
Yeah.
Ibu Marni, I mean, yeah? My beloved Bu Marni. You know what? I'm very happy to meet you here. So my question is very simple. Yeah, hello, Belasmi. I see translation economically at the present days, like Burena before said that, okay, there are many chances, right, for the translator to quote unquote getting money.
Okay.
You know, whenever I'm going to tell my students about, hey, guys, you have to learn about translation. Just example, yeah. Usually I will describe about the purpose and then how translation itself could be utilized in the real life, and we could get once again money from that. So
Bu Vero, we cannot hear you. I only hear some part about how translation can be used to find some money.
Her microphone is off. Probably
Yeah.
she's dealing with the background noise, I think.
Yeah.
Just
I
wait.
guess. Yeah, let's wait. And Bu Marni, please be ready for to respond to the question because they mention your name clearly. Bu Vero, we are still waiting for your question. It's still a statement.
oh, okay. So hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
No, I don't know. It was just like lost connection or what. Sorry. So just if I have to start the class and I have to explain to the students, hello guys. So you have to be able to do translation communicatively and like what Mr. Dangi said, in such a way to be cultural one. And then they will ask like, why should we learn about translation? Not talking about the technology anymore. No, I'm not talking about that, but about what I'm going to get. So in terms of, once again, getting money, so what kind of jobs can I get later on besides the real translation, like you translate for the articles, yeah? Or what Rena said before, talking about translation for a movie. So what kind of jobs actually spread there that we can have for the students to earn those kind of stuff? Once again, money. Me myself at the time, sorry to say, whenever I studied in my college, I did not get that kind of insight. So why should I learn translation? And in the end, I just translate because I have to. That's the first. And the second, okay, I just know that I could get money from the translation. But when my clients want to translate their articles, just that. But I'm really sure that there are more chances, yeah? There are more chances in this world, especially today, in unlimited or borderless world. So, Bu Marni, can you just help me? Thank you.
Thank you, Bu Vero. Bu Marni,
Thank you
please
very much.
respond.
Okay, Mbak Mia, Bu Mia, I will respond to Mbak Vero. Great to see you again. Although you do not show your face, but I still can imagine your smile. Okay, it's like, so great to see you and to have questions from you. I will be so happy answering your question. Okay, so if I can rephrase the question, what are the benefits of translation other than financial gain? Is that correct? Well, I have been working as translator for more than 20 years. I'm very old. but I'm still feeling like 17. Okay, out of topic. Anyway, from my 20 plus years of being a translator, I gain more than just money. Money is only a bonus actually, but what I get from translating is much, much more um, worthy than just money. But of course, I admit that translation is a lucrative business. And for me, I am a language teacher by day and a translator by night, if I get some orders, of course. Uh, and usually I pay my bills with my translation fee, right? So I can get buy things from the translation fee. I admit that. But in addition to financial reward, I also gain skill and expertise. By years, I learned a lot from translating. I am I can quite boast that I'm quite well versed in several topics. So when people ask me about this topic or that topic, I can join the discussion because of the text I translated, or from the books that I read in relation to translation or in relation to the text that I translate. So skill, knowledge, expertise are the other things that I gain from translation in addition to financial reward. I also get experience, I get experience on how to maintain customer satisfaction. I gain some experience in how to build trust with the client, how to keep the deadline, to keep up with the deadline so I do not exceed the time limit. And also I have some friends, some clients. Some of my clients are repeated clients. So they used my service in the past and then they kept coming. I even have a client who used my service for more than 15 years. So he becomes my what is that, my fixed income generator, right? And also I get some friends. I joined several organizations related to translation. One of them is JLTC, Jogja Language Jogja Literary Translators Club. I think Brena belongs to that club too. And there is so many people. There are so many people there who contribute to very rich discussion on translation issues. So I learned so much from that group, and I update my information on many aspects of translation, like website translation and so on. So these are some of the things that I gain. I am so rich after translating. I am not only rich financially after I get the pay from the fee from the clients, but also I get some skill, knowledge, experience, and friends. And this club, this JLTC and Himpunan Penerjemah Indonesia, they are very what can I say? I owe a lot to them because they upgrade my knowledge. They share a lot of things, and they are so awesome translators that I learn from. I look up to them. So these are the things that I gain from translation, and I hope you can also promote that to your students, Mbak Vero ya. Okay, I guess I talk too much. Bu Mia, back to you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Bu Marni. Hello, Mbak Vero. Still wearing your mask, please open that. You're in
Hello,
online
thank you for answering,
conference.
Bu Fani. I feel so satisfied in share the money here. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So I find the place. It's still a crowd here, so sorry, I have to wear the mask.
Okay, that's okay then. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you, Bu Mani. That's really entertaining. The first, yeah, you're talking about Bu Mani, because many of the students actually they are not English students, but the students of economic students and then psychology. They ask me a lot about translation, and I guess actually I have no ideas about that, but now I could get insight from you, yeah, especially about the knowledge behind that and about the richness. Thank you so much. Congratulations anyway, Bu Marni.
Thank you, Vero, for confirming. Yeah. Okay. I think our time is approaching the end. Yeah, it's already 41 minutes, and we only have around 4 minutes. So I'm going to what is it? End this session. And before that, I would like to draw a conclusion from our discussion today. So there is a need of dialogue between translation study scholars and language teaching scholars. And just like Bu Titi mentioned in the beginning, translation has been marginalized, and translation deserves the same interest in language teaching with other fields. And language scholars and instructors need to be more open to translation. More about it. Language teacher education program need to incorporate translation training and address the use of translation in language teaching. And of course, the need to conduct more research, and as English, as the lingua franca, it dominate the world, in several aspects. And just like Bu Marni mentioned, there are 96%, of communication, and it's involving non-native speaker. And of course, the prime thing in translation is communication, and the purpose is making ourselves eligible in international community. And translation is just such a bridge between the familiar and unfamiliar, the known and the unknown. And just like the last thing that we discussed, we need to motivate our student in finding not finding money, but how translation can contribute to their life, and of course make our students realize that the translation words are lucrative, and rewarding. And related to the project-based learning, it is very important to give a real world experience to our student, and of course to beside that, to realize that there is no mental block learning English language, because L1 is also important. Okay, I think that's my conclusion, and I would like to thank for all four speakers, this morning, for sharing your ideas, insight, and delivering such interesting presentation, and also for all the participants, for all your active participation. Hopefully, our sharing today will be beneficial for all of us. I mean, okay, Abu Laksmi, I'm giving back the screen and the time to you.
Okay. Right. Thank you, Bu Mia, for nicely moderating the session. Thank you, Bu Titi, Pak Dangin, Bu Marni, and Bu Rena for sharing fruitful ideas, thoughts, experiences, and best practices in translation. And thank you for all audience who has participated in the questions and answer, and also in joining the session. Again, you can revisit later the recording of this session to UST YouTube channel. Okay, we kindly invite you all again in the third sharing of English language teaching, which will be held on Saturday, November the 7th, 2020 at 9 to 12. The topic for the third sharing will be autonomous learners and long life learners. The presenters will be from Universitas Kristen Satya Wacana Salatiga, Universitas Mercu Buana Yogyakarta, Universitas Sanata Dharma Yogyakarta, and Universitas Sarjana Wiyata Taman Siswa Yogyakarta. And the host will be Universitas Mercu Buana Yogyakarta. Okay, Bapak and Ibu and also audience, the links to the attendance form has been provided in the chat box, and also the link for the certificate as well, and the materials as well. We will keep the meeting room open later for several minutes, to give you chance to fill out the attendance, to download the certificate, and also to download the panelist materials. Okay, last but not least, I kindly ask you to turn on your camera, and the host will help me to take the screenshot for our documentation. Okay, now screen one. Bu Isti, could you please help me? Look at the camera and smile, everybody. Okay. Moving to screen 2. And then screen 3. Okay, thank you. Screen 4. And then screen 5. Okay. Right. Do we have a screen 6? Who is this?
No, Blacksmith.
Okay. Right. So, okay. All right. Thank you very much, Bapak, Ibu, and all of the audience. Thank you for spending your weekend with us. I hope that you've learned a lot today from our panelists and our sharing. And until we'll meet again in the third sharing next November. Okay. Thank you very much again. Take care and salam.